Hello and welcome to VOP Business. I am Kayla Abraham. On the show today, we'll be turning our spotlight on the most important issues in the economy, chief of which is the loss of Nigeria's position as Africa's leading producer of crude, now sitting behind Angola. Who or what could be to blame? Crude oil production in Nigeria crashed by over 9 million barrels between March and April 2023, leading to a cumulative revenue loss of about 356 billion naira. Industry operators have blamed the plunge in oil production on the recent strike by some oil workers, which warranted the shutdown of production at selected wells for a period, as well as theft of crude by thieves. But they have also called for tougher investigations as they allege that some persons at oil export terminals could be culpable in the theft and fraud at these terminals. They also pointed out that this could be the reason why President Muhammadu Buhari gave an order last week directing the Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission to monitor crude oil production by taking over the regulatory oversight of crude oil export terminals nationwide. An analysis of the latest oil production figures obtained from the NUPRC indicated that while Nigeria's output in February was 1.3 per day, it fell to 1.2 per day in March before crashing to 998,602 barrels per day in April. They showed that between February and March, the country lost 38,102 barrels of crude oil daily, representing a total of 1.1 barrels for the 31 days of March. The data from the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC has shown that Angola has overtaken Nigeria to emerge top African crude oil producer for the month of April. According to the April 2023 monthly oil market report published by the oil cartel, Angola recorded 1.6 million barrels per day of crude production in April, up from 972,000 barrels per day recorded in March. But Nigeria recorded an output of 999,000 barrels per day in April compared to 1.3 million barrels per day in March. The April output figure represented the lowest production rates the nation has recorded in 2023. On an annual basis, Nigeria's output level also indicated a drop of 16.7% to 999,000 barrels per day in April 2023 from 1.2 million barrels per day recorded in the corresponding period of April 2022. In recent years, Nigeria has recorded a surge in pipeline vandalism and crude oil theft incidents in its oil-producing region, a development that worsened the nation's revenue challenge. The recent drop in the country's crude production comes at a time when the Nigerian government postponed the June deadline for subsidy removal. Earlier in the month, data from the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission (NUPRC) showed that Nigeria produced an average of 998,602 barrels of crude oil per day in April. The figure represented a fall in production from the 1.2 million barrels per day recorded in March. I'm now being joined by one of Nigeria's leading economic strategists. He is a Director Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Muda Yusuf. Mr. Yusuf, we are glad you can join us at this time, but the story is a sad one. You're welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right, Mr. Yusuf, how are you reacting to the news of Nigeria shedding its spot as the continent's leading producer of crude? Let's start there.
Well, this is not the first time we are sliding into the second position in terms of our ranking in Africa as an oil-producing country. It has happened like this in the past, so it's not anything new. But of course, it is disturbing because it's an indication that we are yet, at least, to put our house in order, and we are yet to realize that we have a very great opportunity in the oil and gas sector. Many of the oil-producing countries are making a whole lot of money at this time. Their reserves are overflowing. So it's unfortunate that the situation is what it is, but it can be better if we have committed a lot more to the reforms in the oil and gas sector. We have done a lot more much earlier than now on issues of insecurity in the Niger Delta. I think those are the main things, but we hope that things will get better. At least I know that in the past few months, the government has been doing a lot to curb the incident of oil theft and all of that. So it's unfortunate that it is what it is, but I think we can make it better.
All right, sir, but what specific steps should the government take to revert this law? What specific steps would you say the government should take?
Well, the first is the policy environment. We find ourselves in this situation because we didn't put in place a set of policies that can inspire the confidence of investors over the years. Over the years, the oil producing companies have clamored for clarity in policy. They have clamored for stability in policy. We were on the petroleum industry bill for almost 15 years, going back and forth, on the petroleum industry bill. The fiscal terms were also not favorable. They were clamoring for better fiscal terms, which will make their investments a lot more profitable. But again, we didn't do much about all of these things. So this led to the divestment by major oil companies. Most of the major multinationals in the oil producing segment of our oil and gas sector, many of them have divested as a result of the challenges of policy. Many of them have gone to other oil producing countries. Many of them even went to Angola. And they are the set of investors that had the financial capacity to actually make an impact in oil production. Of course, some indigenous people have tried to take their place, but it's not the same thing because they have the technical capacity, they have the financial capacity to actually make an impact in oil production. But unfortunately, because of our lackadaisical attitude to the concerns of investors, we didn't quite act on time. It took us almost 15 years to be able to come up with a Petroleum Industry Act, which was delivered only last year. And even with that, what we are having with regard to that act in terms of implementation
All right,
is
sir.
like a partial,
I'll
like
have
a
to
partial
interject.
implementation of the act.
All right, but I'll have to interject, Mr. Yusuf. The problem appears to be multidimensional. What is your advice to stakeholders, the government, companies? What would you have to say about that?
No, the bigger challenge has to do with the government. The government has to create the enabling environment. The investors are ready. In fact, they're already even taking some risk in spite of all the challenges. We have a lot of private investors in the space, but many of them are still complaining. So the bigger issue is for the government to put in place much better policy environment, better regulatory environment, and above all, ensure better security in the oil and gas sector, particularly in the oil producing areas. So those are the three critical things that we need to put in place to be able to inspire the confidence of investors. And if we're able to ensure the stability of those policies, ensure sustainability in ensuring sustained security in oil producing areas, of course, the current investors in that space will do much better and be able to attract even more investors in that space. I think that is what should happen.
All right, but a number of factors have been attributed to be responsible, to this problem. We have corruption, industrial action, like the strike of some oil workers, vandalism, oil theft. Could this be enough to account for, where this is this enough?
No, they are part of the problem because the oil theft, vandalism, kidnapping of oil workers, and so on, which had been on for a very long time, it's a very big factor. But another big factor is the fact that it took us almost over a decade to be able to come up with a very clear regulatory framework. in the form of the Petroleum Industry Act. So it's both a policy problem and a security problem. I think those are the big issues. If we're able to deal with those, then of course we'll see a much more traction, a lot more investment in that space, which will, fetch the country a lot more revenue and foreign exchange. And that will help to stabilize our macroeconomic environment. It will help to improve our foreign reserves. It will help to strengthen our exchange rate.
But the same factors have been the issue, in our oil sector. How can we possibly break these factors?
No, we need to demonstrate the political will. What is required is political will to make the kind of change and to undertake some very critical reforms. That's all. It's the commitment of those in government, the commitment of the political leadership to remove the problem of self-interest, corruption, man no man, absence of level playing field, absence of consequences for infractions. The moment we're able to do that and demonstrate the right kind of political will, we are likely to see a major transformation in the sector. So that is what is needed. And that is why we have to appeal to the incoming administration, at least to do things differently, to commit more to ensuring that there is a sanity in our oil and gas sector. Once we have that, things will begin to change for the better.
All right, sir. Didn't we foresee these laws coming, and what can be done, to change them?
So what can be done to change them is just to make sure that we appoint the right people, we reduce all this problem of political interference, we ensure that we strengthen our regulatory system. And now the outgoing administration has put in place some measures to reform the NNPC to make it fully commercial. The government is also trying to resuscitate the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, which will warehouse all the major investments of government into a single company in a way that they'll be publicly quoted. You have better corporate governance. If you can sustain that trajectory, I think that will be very good for the oil and gas sector, and it's very good for the economy as a whole.
All right, sir. Very important one. Who would you say is to blame for all of this?
So it's the government. It's the government that has responsibility for policy. It's the government that has responsibility to ensure security. So to a large extent, it's the government. The investors are there. Many of them left out of frustration. They left out of frustration. After prevailing on government for many years to improve the policy, to improve the fiscal terms, there was no result. So they had to leave. So the buck stops at the desk of the government. So the political leadership has to do a lot more, to ensure that we have a much better environment for investors in the sector.
All right, sir. Not everybody will agree with the commercialization of NNPC. So what would you recommend on that? What would you recommend on that?
So why will people not agree with it? Because we are seeing the experience of government managing the NNPC. We are seeing the consequences. We are seeing the massive corruption. We are seeing the inefficiency in the system. We are seeing the leakages and all of that. So, the way forward is to commercialize it. And in any case, you already have a Petroleum Industry Act. So both the commercialization and making sure that NNPC is much more independent, much more commercially oriented, are also part of the reform that is taking place in the oil and gas sector.
All right.
They're also part of what is provided for in the Petroleum Industry Act. So there's already a law. So we need to move forward from there.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Yusuf. It was nice having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. Stock investors lost 136 billion naira at the end of trading last week on the Nigerian Exchange Limited. Suffering a dip which saw mixed sentiment was the all share index, which depreciated by 0.4% or 250 0.69 base points to close at 52,214 on Friday. In the last trading week, a total turnover of 3.6 billion shares worth 36.41 billion naira in 27,801 deals was traded by investors on the floor of the NGX against a total of 2.9 billion shares valued at 22.8 billion naira that exchanged hands the previous week in 23,765 deals. The financial services industry led the activity chart with 3.1 billion shares valued at 27.4 billion naira traded in 14,987 deals, contributing 87.4% and 75.4% to the total equity turnover volume and value respectively. The conglomerate industry followed with 99.3 million shares worth 219.4 million is 219.4 million naira in 901 deals. The third place was the consumer goods industry with a turnover of 87.4 million shares worth 1.6 billion shares in 3,706 deals. Trading in the top three equities, namely Fidelity Bank PLC, Access Holdings PLC, and FBN Holdings PLC, accounted for 2.1 billion shares worth 18.6 billion naira in 5,083 deals, contributing 60.17% and 51.16% to the total equity turnover volume and value respectively. Leading the gainers table was the Computer Warehouse Group, whose shares appreciated by 56.8% to close at 2.7 naira, and Adova PLC gained 37.5% to close at 26.4 naira. Transnational Corporation PLC recorded a 33.51% gain to close at 2.59 naira. Multiverse Mining and Exploration PLC gained 32.9% to close at 4.12 naira, and Sovereign Trust Insurance PLC gained 27.27% to close at 0.42 naira. Atop the losers chart was CNI Leasing, which dipped by 19.60% to close at 3.20 naira. Access Holdings PLC lost 12% to close at 9.90 naira. Royal Exchange PLC lost 11.48% to close at 0.54 naira. Sunu Assurance Nigeria PLC suffered a 9.26% loss to close at 0.49 naira, and Buak Cement lost 8.02% to close at 90 naira. The Development Agenda for Western Nigeria Commission has called on the Southwest governors to take advantage of the constitutional amendment laws that removed electricity and railway sectors from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent list to fast-track development of the region. The Commission noted that power and railway sectors were catalysts for economic growth and development, and there was a need for the governors in the region to properly utilize the opportunity. The Director General of the Dawn Commission, Mr. Sheye Oyeleye, stated this at the second edition of the Southwest Investment Promotion Agencies Conference in Akure, Ondo State. The conference, which was organized by the Ondo State Investment Promotion Agency in partnership with the Dawn Commission with the theme Powering Southwest for Productivity Through Increased Investment in Infrastructure. Representatives of all the state governments in all the 6 states of Southwest were in attendance, with focus on attracting investments for development of the energy sector and rail transportation. Speaking, the Dawn Director General explained that organizations of the conference was driven by presidential assent to recent constitutional amendments which decentralized the electricity market. The decentralization allowed states across the country to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity as well as move railway from exclusive legislative list to concurrent legislative list. The Governing Council of the West African Insurance Companies Association, WAICA, has appointed Davis Iyashere as its new Secretary General and Chief Executive Officer. This followed the retirement of the former Secretary General CEO William Coker. With this appointment, Iyashere becomes the first Nigerian to occupy the position in WAICA's 50 years of existence. Prior to his appointment, Iyashere was the Deputy Director in charge of Corporate Communications, Human Resource and Administration at the Nigerian Insurer Association, where he had a career spanning almost 2 decades. While in the services of the association, he was noted for his dedication to duty and commitment to the ideals of the association. He joined the association as Corporate Affairs Manager in 2004 and rose through ranks to his current position by hard work, strength of character, pursuit of excellence, humility, and strong intellectual capacity. Iyashere started his career as a freelance sports journalist with Vanguard newspaper and later with National Times newspaper before he joined the Guardian newspapers as a sub-editor in 2000. He later joined Sporting Champion weekly sports newspaper from where he joined the NIA as Corporate Affairs Manager in 2004. And that is a wrap on VOP Business. I am Kayla Abraham. Do well to follow our YouTube page at Voice of the People TV and our social media platforms at VOP TV Live. Thanks for watching.